My name is Joanne Ford, and I was 39 years old when I finally understood how cruelty prefers to travel. Quietly, disguised as humor, carried on the backs of other people's laughter. It was my mother's birthday, 65. The kind of birthday she treated like a coronation. She chose an overpriced restaurant downtown, the kind with dim lighting and waiters who spoke in whispers, as if emotions might echo too loudly off the walls. She booked a private room, linen tablecloths, name cards, the whole performance. My mother always believed that if something looked perfect enough, it might eventually become true. Everyone showed up. Me, my boyfriend Ryan, my son Noah, freshly 13 and already learning how to disappear in rooms that demanded applause. My older brother Mark, loud, relaxed, permanently convinced the world was designed for him. His wife Claire, polished and smiling in a way that never quite reached her eyes. And their 2 daughters, golden, gifted, endlessly celebrated. Extended family drifted in too. The kind of relatives who smiled wide, drank just enough wine, and always found a way to say something inappropriate by dessert. Noah sat beside me, a folded napkin in front of him, pen moving softly across it. He always drew when he was nervous or bored. That night, it was both. He didn't look up once. Not when the appetizers arrived, not when his cousins launched into stories about auditions, recitals, teachers who just adored them. One sang, the other danced. They attended an elite arts academy, one that cost more per year than most state colleges. I paid for that. Every month. Quietly. Automatically. No one ever mentioned it at the table. Noah kept drawing, Mark noticed. He leaned back in his chair, Cabernet swirling in his glass, smug in that effortless way that only comes from never having your place questioned. He watched Noah for a second too long. Then he snorted. Actually snorted. Your kid's not going anywhere in life. The words landed heavy, then bounced, because the table laughed. Not genuine laughter, not joy. The other kind. The brittle, nervous kind people use when they're afraid not to join in, when silence would feel like taking sides. Everyone laughed. Everyone except Noah. His pen stopped mid-line. He didn't look up, didn't blink, just froze, like his body had learned that stillness was safer than reaction. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not shock. Clarity. I looked straight at Mark and said evenly, "Good to know. I'll cancel the auto payment for your daughter's art school." The room went silent. The kind of silence that feels loud, because everyone is suddenly aware of their breathing. Mark stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. Claire's face drained of color. My mother didn't look at me at all. She lifted her wine glass, eyes fixed on the stem, and whispered, "Joanne, let's not ruin the mood." But the mood had already told the truth. We finished dinner in fragments. Polite smiles, forced conversation, plates cleared too quickly. No one mentioned tuition. No one mentioned Noah. On the drive home, Ryan shook his head and laughed softly, like the whole thing had been a misunderstanding. "Mark was just being Mark," he said. "You didn't have to take it so personally." I didn't answer. At home, Noah handed me the napkin. He'd drawn the table. All of us sitting there. But in his version, half the people had wolf heads. Not cartoon wolves, sharp ones, watchful, smiling with teeth. Mark, my mother, others I didn't even expect. He hadn't drawn himself. I stared at it for a long time after he went to bed. Then I opened my laptop, logged into the tuition portal, and canceled the next payment. Not because of what Mark said, but because of what no one else did. Ryan told me I was being petty, said I'd regret it, said Noah would forget by morning. But I couldn't stop looking at those wolves, and the way they smiled like they'd always been fed. I didn't announce anything after that night. No speeches, no warnings, no dramatic exits. I just waited. 3 weeks passed before the first crack appeared. It came as a text from Claire, cheerful and carefully worded, like she was afraid of waking something dangerous. "Hey, Joanne. Weird question. Looks like the art school tuition didn't go through this month. Just wanted to check in? I stared at the screen longer than necessary, watching the little typing bubble appear, disappear, then appear again. I replied with 2 words. Not weird. She didn't respond. The next day, Mark called. He never bothered with pleasantries. He went straight for accusation, like always. What's your problem? He demanded. My card got declined when we tried to fix the tuition. Are you trying to make a point? I kept my voice even, calm, almost polite. I think it's time you handled your own family's finances. He scoffed. You're being bitter. No, I said. I'm being done. He laughed, short, sharp. You're really going to punish my daughters over something I said? I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm just not feeding wolves anymore. That ended the call, and that's when things started shifting. Not loudly, not dramatically. Quiet things, small things. The kind meant to look accidental. My mother suddenly became very active in the family group chat. Photos from that dinner appeared, cropped just right, captions glowing. My beautiful family. So grateful for nights like this. Noah wasn't in a single picture. I noticed immediately. I don't think she did. Then came the birthday party for Mark's youngest daughter. Everyone was invited, except us. When I asked my mother about it, she paused, just long enough to sound thoughtful. Oh, she said lightly, you've been so busy lately. I figured you'd want the weekend free. I told her we already had a gift, that we could stop by. No need, she replied. Just leave it on the porch. No need to come in. Noah was sitting on the couch while I took the call. He didn't look up, but when I hung up, he quietly stood, took the wrapped gift from the table, carried it back to his room, and opened it himself. He didn't ask about his cousins after that. Not once. I expected Ryan to be neutral at least. Instead, one night after dinner, he told me he'd run into Mark at the gym. Said Mark looked pretty upset about everything. He thinks you're going too far, Ryan said gently. Maybe you should be the bigger person. Apologize. If not to him, then to your mom. I asked him why. He sighed like I was exhausting him. Because you're making things harder for everyone. Something in me tightened. I asked him a question I hadn't planned to ask. Did you laugh? I said. At the table? He didn't answer right away. That silence told me more than words ever could. After that, I started unplugging things. Quietly. I canceled the cleaning service I'd been paying for at my mother's house. Stopped covering her monthly grocery deliveries, the ones I'd taken over after my father died. Shut down the online shop I'd built for Claire, the one I managed behind the scenes. No announcements, no explanations. I just let go. The calls came fast after that. First my mother, pretending nothing was wrong. Then voicemails from Claire, each one more strained than the last. Finally, Mark, yelling, accusing me of trying to hurt his children. I didn't respond, because I wasn't finished yet. Not even close. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, right as I was folding laundry. The school counselor's voice was gentle, too gentle. The kind that's trained to soften bad news before it lands. She said it wasn't urgent, just a casual check-in. But she asked if I could come in that week. I went the next morning. Her office was bright and aggressively cheerful. Laminated posters about mindfulness and kindness lined the walls. There was a bowl of stress balls on her desk, all pastel colors, all meant to suggest safety. She smiled at me like someone who apologized when other people bumped into her. There's been a concern, she said carefully. Nothing official, nothing alarming, just something we felt obligated to follow up on. My stomach tightened. She explained that someone had anonymously contacted the school expressing worry about Noah's home environment, that there might be instability, emotional pressure, isolation. She stressed over and over that it wasn't an accusation. I asked the questions that mattered. Has Noah said anything concerning? No. Is he falling behind in class? Number. In fact, his teachers had noted improvement. I nodded, waited, then asked the last one. Has anyone else in my family contacted the school? She paused. I can't answer that. That was my answer. I didn't tell Noah right away. There was no point in adding weight to shoulders already learning how to carry too much. He'd been better lately, lighter. He'd started painting again, not quick sketches, but real pieces. One hung above his desk now, a girl made entirely of gears and wires, standing upright while everything around her bent. He called it silent power. That night, I brought it up with Ryan. I expected outrage, shock, at least anger. Instead, he leaned back, rubbed his face, and sighed. "Maybe it's time to talk to your family," he said. "Clear the air." I stared at him. "Someone tried to make it look like I'm unfit to raise my own son." He shrugged. "I just think communication could help." "What air," I asked quietly, "do you think needs clearing?" He hesitated. Then he slipped. "Look," he said, "it's not like we haven't already talked about this." The room went very still. "Talked about what?" I asked. He looked away. That's when it came out. They'd already met. My mother, Mark, Claire, and Ryan. At a cafe downtown. Lattes. Neutral ground. A conversation. I wasn't mentioned until it was time to discuss next steps. Damage control. How to handle me. Ryan said it wasn't a betrayal. Said he was just trying to help them understand what I was going through. I asked what exactly he told them I was going through. He didn't answer. He just said they had a point. That maybe I was isolating Noah. That maybe I was going too far, burning bridges, creating problems where there didn't need to be any. Something shut off inside me then. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just nodded and went to bed. Later that night, while Ryan slept, I opened his laptop. There was no password. Dozens of messages, group chats, threads that stretched back weeks. They talked about me like I was a project, an unstable variable, someone who needed to be managed before I destroyed everything. They talked about Noah like he was fragile, like my refusal to bend was hurting him more than their cruelty ever had. One message from my mother sat heavy on the screen. She's punishing us because her kid isn't special. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Nothing dramatic, nothing final. I just wanted Ryan's name off a few accounts. I told myself it was preparation. That evening, Noah taped a new drawing to the fridge. A small house, one story, soft green pastels, 2 figures standing in front of it, a woman and a boy. Everyone else was far in the distance, faces blurred. At the top, he'd written one word, freed. Ryan walked past it twice that night and never said a word. 2 days after I moved the money, Ryan came home with flowers. He hadn't brought me flowers in over a year. He set them on the counter like a peace offering, kissed my cheek the way people do when they're trying to rewind time, and suggested we go out to dinner. Just the 2 of us. "We've been tense," he said. "We should reconnect." I asked him, why now? He hesitated, then smiled. "Because I don't want us drifting." I told him I wasn't hungry. He nodded, but something shifted behind his eyes. The charm hadn't landed the way he expected. That night, I lay awake while he snored beside me, thinking about all the times I'd translated his silence for him. To my mother, to Mark, to Noah, to myself. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice was syrupy sweet. She said Ryan had told her I was overwhelmed, that they were all worried, that they were praying for me. I asked her one question. "Did you call Noah's school?" She paused, just a fraction too long. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, then added softly, "You've always been so intense, Joanne. Even as a little girl, you never knew how to forgive." I hung up. That afternoon, Ryan took a call from Mark while we were eating lunch. He answered it at the table, laughed loudly, then stepped outside to finish the conversation. Noah glanced at me once. His hand tightened around his fork. That night, after Ryan fell asleep, I opened his laptop again. More messages, more plans, more concern about managing my reactions. I didn't confront him. The next morning, I told Ryan I wanted him out of the house by the end of the week. He laughed at first. Then he stopped. "You'd really blow up our relationship over this?" he asked. "No," I said calmly. "I'm ending it because you were never on my side." He suggested therapy. A trip, a fresh start. Every word felt like noise. Delay. Another way to avoid choosing. By Friday, he was gone. Not just physically, emotionally. He left like someone escaping a mistake, not mourning a loss. Noah didn't ask questions. That night, he sat beside me on the couch and handed me a folded piece of paper. A drawing. A long road stretching forward. 2 small figures walking away, bags in hand. The sun rising behind them. No title, no names, just truth. After Ryan left, the house didn't feel empty. It felt honest. Noah started drawing maps, dozens of them. Cities with winding roads, strange symbols, places with no labels. One was called The Edge of Enough. I started building something too, quietly, without asking permission. I accepted the job the same day I toured the house. Remote logistics coordinator. Steady hours, decent pay, no commute, no office politics. Nothing glamorous, just work that belonged to me and ended when I shut the laptop. The house sat behind a thin row of pines outside a quiet town I'd never imagined living in. 2 bedrooms, a slanted roof, floors that creaked like they were telling secrets, a crooked fence out back that looked like it had given up trying to stand straight. But there was a sunroom. Windows on 3 sides, light everywhere. Noah walked in, set his backpack down, and said, "This one." I didn't tell anyone we were moving. Not my mother, not Mark, not Claire, not Ryan. They hadn't earned the right to that information. While Noah was at school one morning, I took every photo in the living room that included Ryan's face. Wedding-adjacent memories, holidays, smiles that meant nothing now. I packed them into a box, labeled it with his name, slid it into the hall closet, and never opened it again. The calls came anyway. My mother rang twice that week. I didn't answer. Claire emailed asking for passwords to the vendor accounts I'd set up for her shop. Said she was locked out and really needed my help. I read it, then deleted it. Then Mark finally wrote, subject line, "You win." The message was short and bitter. He said I'd torn the family apart over nothing, that I was dramatic, that one day Noah would resent me for isolating him, that I was punishing people for not applauding a kid who hadn't earned it yet. He ended with, "Hope it was worth it." I didn't reply. I already knew it was. Noah came home the next day to find boxes stacked in the living room. I expected questions. Where are we going? Why now? What about school? Instead, he sat down and began sorting his drawings. Not all of them, just the ones he wanted to take. The rest he rolled carefully and slid under his bed. We packed for 2 days. Clothes, essentials, art supplies, kitchen things. Noah brought 1 box of books and 1 box of tools. Nothing else. The night before we left, he knocked on my door holding a new drawing. This one was different. A wide road curving past mountains, trees leaning toward a small cabin by a lake, smoke rising from the chimney. 2 sets of footprints on the path. "I made this one for real life," he said. At the bottom, he'd written, "Start here." I folded it carefully and put it in the glove compartment. We left before sunrise. Noah slept in the passenger seat, hoodie pulled up, headphones on, sketch pad resting in his lap. The roads were empty, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're sneaking away, even when you have every right to leave. I didn't cry. I thought I might. Instead, I felt calm. The kind that comes after you realize the roof held through the storm. The house was smaller than what we'd left behind. Crooked in places, imperfect. But the sunroom filled with Noah's maps within a day. He joined a robotics club at the library, made 2 friends who liked building things out of scrap. He smiled without checking who was watching. We didn't talk about our old life, not because it was forbidden, because it wasn't needed. Months later, eating takeout on the living room floor, Noah looked up and said, "I think this is the first place I've ever felt real." I nodded. That night, I took the drawing from the glove compartment, framed it, hung it by the front door. So every time we leave, we remember why. And every time we come home, we know exactly where we belong.